You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Sean Wilkie, and along with my somewhat awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in the space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and introduce today's guest.
Hi, I'm very excited to introduce Aaron Oakes. So, Aaron is the CEO at United Pet Care, the co-founder and CFO Fetch Natural Pet Markets. Spent the majority of his career in human healthcare. He ran marketing team for Electa, a radiation oncology OEM, and he spent couple years at McKinsey and Company Consulting for medtech companies on a variety of strategy, sales, and marketing related topics. He resides in Phoenix, Arizona with his wife Raquel and two rescue pups, Loki and Archie. Aaron, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Yeah, Ivan, Sean, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
So really cool topic. I mean, your background is fascinating. So you were consulting people on strategy and execution, and then you were in the healthcare vertical, and then now you're taking all of that and applying to pet market. I think those are awesome prerequisites because we're sort of like healthcare, but 20 years behind and on everything, including technology, workflows, insurance, everything. So today's episode, we decided to talk about pets benefits and tell us a little bit about what is United Pet Care.
Sure. And I would just want to say sometimes being 20 years behind the healthcare industry is not actually a bad thing, especially in the US. There's been some progress that's been less than positive over the last 2 decades. United Pet Care is a pet insurance alternative. So we operate, for those in the States, kind of like an HMO or like AAA for pet parents. Effectively, we are a double-sided network. We work with about 1,000 veterinary practices, mostly in the United States, across the country, and we connect them with proactively invested pet parents who are looking to get the best possible healthcare for their fur babies. A mechanism by which we do that is a voluntary benefit. So we go to employer groups, and although we're not insurance, when you're signing up for health insurance, life insurance, those types of things, United Pet Care is an option.
So I'm confused. So you're not insurance, but it sounds like insurance. So I think we need to dig deeper.
Absolutely. So we are not a financial intermediary, which is the obviously it's great for me from a regulatory standpoint, especially coming from the human healthcare world, which is very highly regulated. Effectively, for our veterinary partners, we're a marketing, customer attraction, and retention tool. So for our in-network vets, we promote them actively to these employer groups, these gainfully employed individuals that are seeking out the best care for their pets. And in exchange for that, we ask that our veterinary partners provide proprietary savings to those members. And so that's kind of hence the AAA element of the program. So we don't get involved at the transaction level. What that means from a member perspective is there's no pre-existing conditions, there's no breed-specific conditions, everything is covered. Your pet can be from birth to, we have a 22-year-old cat that's currently covered by United Pet Care. All small animals are covered, and it's a simplified insurance model. No claims, no waiting periods, no forms, and no anxiety as to whether or not a service is going to be covered. Everything is laid right out front, very transparent from the first day that you sign on.
So I'm a little slower than Sean. So can you walk me through this? Oh, he's celebrating now. That's the first time I admitted something like that.
Can you slow down and maybe say that again? I'm going to get the calendar out and write that down.
Are we recording this? Okay. So can you walk me through it as I'm a pet owner? Like what's happening? Why do I want to find out about you? And what does it happen when I need services?
Absolutely. So I differentiate our use case between traditional insurance as prevalence versus severity. And insurance is a fantastic product. There's a lot of great reasons to have pet insurance, but there are a lot of things that it doesn't cover. So if I'm a pet parent, I know that I'm going to have to work through my $500 deductible. I know that if I have, a short-nosed pet, there are certain things that are never going to be covered. I also may not be qualified for insurance, or the premiums are going to be prohibitively expensive because of the age of the pet, the breed, the type of coverage that I'm looking for. So with United Pet Care, I know that for a flat fee and a pretty minimal monthly fee, I can go in, and any service in-house that I consume at my vet is going to be somewhere between 25 and 50% off.
Wow. So I'm getting it. I think I got it. And so you could be a customer of United Healthcare through an employee benefits package. It could be one of the added benefits. So any of the employers that are listening to this might be a really neat thing to add, I'm guessing. But you could also have pet insurance. And so you could be getting the discount that you get because you're with United. And you could also have independent or Trupanion, for example, and combine these things. So you're actually maximizing the riskiness of owning a pet and having these unforeseen costs come up.
Yeah, absolutely right. So we're a complementary product to pet insurance. We're an alternative product to pet insurance, just kind of depending on the client's financial standing and the level of protection that they're looking to receive. Pet insurance is a little unique in that insurance companies, at least as of now, really don't have any direct negotiations with the providers themselves. They just pay that bill. And so that financial transaction happens between the member and the insurance company. And so if you have United Pet Care, that bill is reduced up front. And then that is what gets submitted to the insurance company for reimbursement post facto.
Yeah, got it. So it's like a membership benefit. It's similar to having a Costco membership in some ways, where you know you're going to get a discount on all of these things that you're going to potentially need to buy.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay, got it. So now the next question is we have a pet owner listening. I think it's quite the opposite. We have veterinarians listening, but say we had a pet owner listening and a veterinarian listening. What's in it for each one of them?
So on the pet owner side, again, especially with the pandemic puppy boom, I think everybody's realizing very rapidly that one, they would do absolutely anything to make sure that their pet is in good health, and two, that veterinary care is just much more expensive than most people anticipate. So what's in it for them is if you're truly invested in getting the best possible care for your animal. I mean, again, a lot of corollaries on the human healthcare side. Unfortunately, oftentimes we wait to go to the doctor until it's too late or there's a big bill awaiting us. And so the preventative types of things, the regular checkups, the teeth cleaning, the services that will help prevent much more expensive problems down the line, our service is absolutely perfect for that. On the vet side, we are customer attraction and retention tool. And so we have taken the time or made the investment in cultivating these relationships with local employer groups. And so in the markets where we're at significant presence, we work with most every major employer, and those basically just kind of become recurring annuities for our vet partners. So anytime somebody hires on, it replenishes that pool of folks that are eligible to go to our veterinary partners. We've also gathered some pretty compelling data around, I think discount can be kind of seen as a dirty word within the veterinary space, but what we found is that our members on average actually spend about 2.5 times the national average on veterinary services every year, and kind of a unique facet of our program, our members actually pick a primary care veterinarian for which that's at one time the only vet that they can get a proprietary rate. And so basically they can change any time. They still have access to the full network, but we found that 3/4 of our members never change their primary vet. And so one of the pieces of feedback we've heard from our vet partners is that they really value building those long-term sustained relationships with their members. Not only good from a business standpoint, but it's also good from an overall health standpoint from the animal's perspective. And so we're able to kind of quantitatively prove that our members, although it's maybe at a little bit lower gross margin than they would have otherwise gotten, that one, we're kind of a risk-free source for those members. Two, the members typically spend more than maybe an average member would coming off the street. And three, they tend to be more loyal, consume more discretionary services. And so the lifetime value of those members is much, much higher.
That's interesting. So your clients are businesses that are not veterinary clinics. So they're consuming the product and providing benefits to the owners. Therefore, when there's a need, those employees that have those benefits can go to vet partner clinics, and you're maintaining that sort of relationship between that, like all three parts of it, essentially.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's on the member side, it's a B to B to C model. So most of our efforts are on establishing relationships with those employer groups. For our employers, we're employee attraction and retention. The stat that I love to quote, currently only about 60% of the workforce require some sort of glasses or contacts, and 75% of the workforce have a pet at home. And I use that specifically because if you started at a new employer and they didn't have vision insurance, that would strike you as fairly odd. It's just kind of become commonplace. Yet for the workers, it's actually less relevant now than some sort of pet protection benefit. So I firmly believe that we flash forward 3 to 5 years, and when you get your package, when you start on it at a new employer, you'll have health benefits, vision benefits, and pet protection benefits right alongside that.
So how do the vets get paid? Is that coming from you? Like why do they make that discount?
Sure. So from a vet perspective, the value proposition is very binary. If you're actively looking to source new clients, then we have something for you. If the vets are on a 6 to 8 week waiting list, which oftentimes in COVID, many are, that value proposition erodes a little bit. Typical COGS for a vet practice is right around 20 to 23% if you exclude labor. So our value proposition to the vets is if you have labor, you want to make them as productive as possible and bring new revenue in the door, we become a ready source for doing that, where there's no required investment up front. We don't charge our vet partners to market their practices to our employer groups. They get paid in 2 ways. So when a pet parent signs up for the practice and designates a practice as their primary vet, we actually notify that vet practice and pay that practice a small per member per month stipend. So very similar to the HMO model. So the vets get a check from us on a per pet basis. It's not that much, but at scale, we cut checks to our veterinary partners of a couple $1,000s per month, some of our larger ones, and that just goes straight to the bottom line. And then the second time, we're actually, again, not involved in the financial transaction between the member and the vet. And so that is whenever that member chooses to go for their pet's healthcare, they are only going to that vet as their primary source. And then again, we're directing that volume to vet A rather than just kind of randomly sprinkled.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. So I can see, the obvious advantages, and I kind of get the business, and, it's really an interesting kind of innovative middle place. Do you have competitors in this space, Aaron? Are you guys the only people that do what you do?
We do have one direct competitor that has a similar model on the member side. A couple of differences competitively. They actually don't have a financial relationship with their vet partners, so there is no monthly stipend fee like we pay. And then they also don't require that their members select a primary vet. So much more difficult to track volume and to actually show at a practice level how many incremental patients are being brought at any given time. So it's a little bit of a looser network, but a similar voluntary benefits model. And then there certainly is a lot more competition attracted into the space in terms of kind of insurance alternates and just, traditional pet insurance in general. Personally, we actually advocate and love when an employer group offers both traditional pet insurance and United Pet Care, because quite honestly, what often happens is most employees they get a quote for pet insurance. They go, oh my God, this is a little more expensive than I was anticipating, but I still want to do something positive for, my fur babies. And so then our uptake rates are actually very high, either when they consume both services or as an alternate to pet insurance.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I get it. So if I'm just an individual pet parent out there and I hear this episode and I wanted to sign up, can I sign up outside of an employer benefits program?
You absolutely can. Our employees actually get a little bit of a proprietary rate on the membership. That's the benefit that we confer on behalf of their employers. But you can absolutely go on the website and sign up. Even better, actually, you can refer your employer. And if your employer signs on and brings us on as a voluntary benefit, we'll give that referring employee a free membership.
Oh, cool. That's really, really interesting. So what's the most exciting thing that you guys are working on right now? What's coming out the door, or what's exciting about the business that kind of gets you riled up?
Absolutely. I think inherently the opportunity is pretty exciting, but we also sit kind of at the confluence of 3 pretty interesting markets. Voluntary benefits is becoming increasingly popular during the Great Resignation period. Now employee retention is becoming more important than ever. And we also have kind of a captive pet parent audience that is of interest to not just veterinarians, but also all types of pet services providers. And so we are in development on an app that'll allow for much more regular engagement with those pet parents and help kind of guide their decision point. Our mission is to make world-class pet healthcare available and accessible to pet parents, but we're pretty close to dropping health off of that and just world-class pet care. So that could be finding the best possible doggy daycare. It could be groomers. It could be answering questions about nutrition, which is also a passion of my wife's and mine. So that's the goal. And we're making some pretty significant strides towards consumer engagement and activation by having a much more mobile experience.
Well, it sounds like you're fired up about what you're doing, which is really exciting. So let's shift gears a bit. And how the heck did you get into this industry? So McKinsey consultant turns into alternative benefit. I want to hear the story.
Yeah, well, like a couple of steps along the way, but it was actually it was a COVID reset for both my wife and I. In the grand scheme of COVID sob stories, this doesn't even rate, but effectively both of us had our careers kind of derailed when COVID hit, and we took a pause to say, what are we passionate about, and where do we think there's going to be opportunity in this new normal? And we had adopted a pet during the pandemic. Really, from a mental health perspective, realized what a critical role both of our dogs have played in our life and our relationship, physical health, mental well-being, and also realized a couple of things. Vet care was expensive, and then also as consumers and conscientious eaters ourselves, we were really looking for ways to become better educated and more activated pet parents. And so that led to actually founding that Fetch Natural Pet Market, Ivan, that you mentioned at the outset. That's a pet boutique that my wife runs. It's very focused on consumer education and kind of cutting through some of the muck related to pet nutrition. I got really interested then in kind of helping her launch that, and then started looking at different business models and different opportunities. And we had actually had kind of a negative experience with pet insurance previously, where because of something on page 7 of the website, a bill that we had was not covered due to a breed-specific condition. And so at the time, we ended up dropping the coverage, but always were interested in, kind of figuring out a better way. And that was when the United Pet Care opportunity presented itself.
Very cool. Very cool.
I like the fact that you're going through employers, because in general, the adoption of the pet insurance in North America is just terrible. I think last stats I heard was like 2%. And then interestingly, in Europe, if you look, there's like 20%, I think. And it's I was a little surprised, especially in North America, between Canada and US. In Canada, we have social medical care. So basically, you're sick, you go to the hospital, you'll be waiting until you die, but it will be free. And funny enough, when I was a vet in Toronto and area, I had one client that had the entire whatever was done to his pet. And then he opened and put his healthcare card because he thought that this would be covered, or he tried to. Like, it was just funny. But I thought that in Canada, we in general are not as familiar at paying for the benefits, at least health benefits. I mean, we have to still buy like dental coverage and stuff like that. But in general, we're not paying for health benefits. In US, it's a much more familiar concept to pay for your insurance and your health benefits. So do you have any understanding why we're like, I thought in the US it will be more common for pets as well, right? So they pay for insurance, or you guys pay for insurance there. So you would be same sort of, car insurance, everything else. Why people are not adopting pet insurance more? Do you ever think about that?
Absolutely. And to be honest, I think it's a little bit of a vicious cycle that the industry is in at the moment. And so one of the fundamental differences between pet insurance and human insurance, as I alluded to before, was right now a pet insurance company pays that veterinarian at generally rack rate. There is no kind of pricing power. And that's because at 2% market penetration in a very fragmented market, no insurance company has enough of a presence to go to a veterinarian and say, I'm going to bring you this group of clientele, but only at 70%, 80% of your usual and customary charges. That will change as adoption increases. It's just an inevitability of market forces. But as of right now, basically that means that the only place to squeeze the balloon, if these companies hope to turn a profit, is by declining coverage or excluding coverage, because just mathematically, they need to collect more in premiums at an individual level than they actually pay the veterinarians. Otherwise, the math doesn't work. So I do believe that that'll be shifting rapidly. I think it's going to dramatically change the dynamics of the veterinary industry as payers start to coalesce, because there's probably room for only a couple of these in the United States market, and as adoption increases. And Dr. Zach, you're dead on. I mean, in Northern Europe, some countries, it's actually 1 in 2 pets that are insured.
Wow.
So it is an interesting, kind of greenfield space in the pet. Even if we just kind of grow, up to the market, there's probably 10 to 25x in terms of potential that'll be coming. And that's why, quite honestly, you see a lot of capital being attracted to the space, even though some of the fundamentals of the providers are really, quite honestly, not that compelling at the moment.
No, absolutely.
So, Aaron, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. We like to wrap up the same way with every episode. So the first question that we've got for you is a book, something that's inspired you on this entrepreneurial journey or in your life so far that you recommend to our guests.
Absolutely. So maybe I'll go with 2 if that's permitted. So on the consumer side and on the employer side, there's a book called Pet Nation that talks about specifically kind of the journey of pets. It is somewhat US centric, but there are some global trends noted as well. It was actually written before COVID, and it really focuses on the human animal bond and the kind of holistic psychological, physical, mental benefits that our relationships with pets confer upon us. And then what that means from a policy standpoint, from an industry standpoint, and just kind of explaining what that puppy boom that was kind of burgeoning even before COVID, and then has just had absolute rocket boosters put on it over the course of the last 18 months. On the veterinary side, or on the industry side, I'm a lover of Eric Reis and the Lean Startup and the Startup Way. I've just tried to carry that from the time I was working in industry to jar some stead thinking and get people to think about things in a little bit more pilot programs and small bets. And there's a lot of incredible things about the veterinary industry. One observation as a relative outsider is that sometimes people are a little bit afraid of new things, new models, and change. And I've always found that this book is a great framework, provides some great frameworks for thinking about things that there's a little less daunting and wholesale commitments, and more about taking those calculated bets, testing hypotheses, and trying to improve your practice in an iterative fashion.
The very last question that we usually ask is, who would you think would be good to invite to this show from your network?
Sure. A lot of people come to mind, but I'd say a couple that stand out. So Rivers Morrow is the CEO of Vet Marketing Pro, also COO of Easy Vet, which is kind of a new veterinary clinic model, and also has a hand in cloud retriever. He's a fascinating guy that has his fingers in a lot of pies, and a like thinker who's just kind of always looking at, hey, how can we do this particular element of the industry better? I would also say John Keatley, the CEO of ScratchPay. So again, very similar mission. He was at Klarna for a long time, also a McKinsey guy, and now is focusing some of those principles on making, again, treatment more accessible financially in the veterinary industry. So I think either would be a great add.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryin.to. See you next week.